What the hell is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Pronago, and I'm bringing you some more Cosmonarchy casting. We are about to get into another set between Neblime and jakulangski, Aussie versus Filipino. Let's see what happens on Paradise. We've got 4 games to cast, so we'll see. Maybe this is going to be a two-parter. We'll see how long the games actually are. The replays look pretty sizable, which is the only reason I say that. We've got Neblime, the Protoss, in the top right. I want to say that is not cyan, but it looks kind of close to cyan, so maybe that's turquoise. We'll come back to that later. We got jakulangski in the bottom left, and it is. Oh, okay. They're enjoying Crown Link. Yes, this is of course the yellow Zerg, right? Right? Yeah, of course it's yellow. And of course on these guys, it actually was cyan, so I was wrong. I was right the first time, wrong the second time. I'll let you guys. That's like a half a point, right? Wink, wink. So we do have plenty of colors in Cosmonarchy. We got plenty of smashes to do, plenty of things to talk about. This is a brave new world of strategy and understanding and many, many exciting things that you can make happen in the game, where there's about 50 units per race, and we're adding a 4th race later this year, if you can believe that. Progress has been continuing, and we are continuing to make inroads on all sorts of things, be they performance improvements, code quality improvements, also making sure that we have plenty of work to be done in a couple of other departments like the art assets, continuing progress there. And now on Paradise, a map that is by BittyB, we do indeed have cross spawns for our first map configuration. It will be Larvosk first, and I'm waiting to see if the pool is coming. It looks like it is indeed going to arrive, so no worries there. Is jakulangski just straight up scouting cross spawn? He is. He is straight up cross-spawn scouting. Now that... Okay, never mind. I think he's corrected the error of his ways. But actually, it was the right move. So it is going to be a double gate opener for Neblime. jakulangski has proven that he can take down Neblime, but the ratio is definitely Neblime favored. A lot of the games that we've cast between these two, as they are on similar times, since they're in a similar part of the world, they do play a lot of matches. The games that I've seen between these two people have generally been like kind of close in the early stages of the game, and then Neblime will win out through superior macro or perhaps superior army positioning and decision making. jakulangski likes to be a little bit greedy, but he's also fashioned out a very aggressive early to mid-game transition point that it seems like he's pretty apt at doing. So he is going to go ahead and walk on past the Legionnaire. Neither of our players looking at the minimap to see what that was. So that's a little bit more consequential for jakulangski, because he now won't have advance warning that it's going to be a Legionnaire, that it's going to be gateway units, but he will know now that he walks on over, and he should be able to see that indeed there are 2 gates there. And the scribe was idling to build something, or was it for real? Zets are going to go ahead and march their way across. We do have no additional military units coming on in, so if that Legionnaire decides to hightail it to the bottom left, there might be an opportunity for him to do a little bit of damage. Now, because those Zets did end up leaving the area, they can't deny the scout. And because they can't deny the scout, they cannot stop the opportunity here for Neblime to see the Vornath. Now, when you upgrade your pool into the Vornath Pond, it gives you access to the Vorvakor, which is a mutation of the Zeth. It also gives you access to Nathrakors, which are air units that come in spawns of 2. This Legionnaire standing here guarding the expansion attempt here from jakulangski, and that's obviously going to allow Neblime to finish the job. There it goes. Scribe is being attempted to be caught in the middle of the map. That has not happened just yet. So now losing 2 workers so far in the early stages of the game, ousted by Quasilisks. That will take care of that. And the Hacharosk will go down. Now, because of this Zethrakor here, we are going to have some knowledge on Jack's side of when the Nexus goes down. So we should be just fine in terms of Zerg information gathering. A Warden was placed defensively, and Ecclesiasts were specced into here by Neblime. One of the things that makes me think of is he expected, because he saw the gas being harvested, he expected that the Vornath Pond would have borne the air units that you got to watch out for, and hence the single Warden for now and the Ecclesiasts for defense. But they've now moved across the map, so a hypothetical counterattack could be pretty big. However, instead, it's actually just going to be a bit of a Quas spam. We've got Quasilisks, we've got Zethrakors, and now we have some Vorvs. The Vorvs will gain a little bit of base movement speed. The other thing that they do is that when they attack a unit, they slow it and they rend its armor by 1. Not consequential for the Ecclesiast, very consequential for the Zealot, as it does allow the Zethrakor to deal full damage and the Quaslisk to deal much more damage. So you can see there, they're really kind of sticking to the enemy in that respect. And despite losing all of the Zealots, he's still looking okay here, Neblime. He absolutely can withdraw and retreat from this fight. He's got 4 more Ecclesiasts hanging out by the Nexus that's starting to warp in. That Vorv could have maybe helped to pick off that Ecclesiast, but every time a unit near an ally near the Ecclesiast's target is struck, they get shields back. That's basically how the Ecclesiast weapon works. It's like a weapon-based passive. So when this Ecclesiast attacks this Zethricore, other units around it will get shield benefits. So we don't really have that many units standing tall here for jakulangski. Neblime trying to close the distance. When an Ecclesiast dies, it will speed up all of its allies. So that's another component of it. But look, the Quaslisk's having a great time picking off a lot of these Ecclesiasts. These are a lot in terms of Vespene expenditure. Now we have the Hidebreaker passive being levied against the Zealots thanks to the Vorvicors. So they're trying to help the Quaslisks get a little bit more value there. Unfortunately, it was not to be. Feels like if those 3 Vorvs were there at the start of the fight, that would have been different. Despite that, though, I mean, you are rending down the military count quite conceptually, quite significantly. And so you look at that, you think to yourself, okay, Neblime, you got to be on notice. You can't be moving out. You just kind of lost the opportunity to build up a critical mass. And that does favor the Zerg to be a little bit more laissez-faire with their spending for the next couple minutes, maybe 2 minutes exactly. Embassy coming for extra worker production, and of course the ever-important Witness, that is the Observer unit, but renamed to be even more epic. My auto build suddenly got turned off. I can only imagine what he's talking about. Oh, okay, he's actually talking about that. If you, there is a bug lately where you have to Alt-tab sometimes after sending a chat message. Or maybe it is actually just holding Alt. Neblime might be familiar with that as well. So yeah, for those who don't know, we have quick targeting in Cosmonarchy. And yeah, generally speaking, there is... I think it's after you send a chat message, though. It's like something to do with the chat. In the way that Veek was able to... he's one of the programmers here, the co-developer of the project, really. He re-implemented hotkey handling and general keyboard handling for a lot of things. And I think sending enter, pushing enter to like do the chat message or something always pranks me. It makes it so that I have to like Alt-tab. Or maybe, as Neblime says, just press Alt once, and that will fix it. So there you go. Even I'm learning something from this. And, you know, I usually learn some things about the game from watching the casts, but I don't always learn about those kinds of things. So that's pretty funny. Of course, we'll just see if we can fix the actual issue, so that you don't have to know that nebulous Neblime knowledge, which is not 3 N's, actually, since knowledge starts with a K. But I guess you could put a K on Neblime and a K on Nebulous, and then it would be 3 Ks. Oh, we can't really do that, though. All right, we have a 3rd base. That's a 3 we can get behind. We can also get behind your 3s. If you like what you're seeing in Cosmonarchy, you like the different units, different graphics, the fact that we have all sorts of cool people playing the game that will even share knowledge like what Neblime just shared. It's very, very nice. And if you want to join us, we got a Discord server, we got a donation page, all sorts of stuff. So I'm just saying, you can give yourself some voice, and there are 1,000 Zethricours, not exactly, but a good number of them marching across the map. Bit of a stampede setup over here, and Neblime does have to fear that position a little bit. The Ecclesiasts are going to do well to ward off the initial attack, but hemorrhaging 3 Zeths is not necessarily going to matter too much. Now, sharking away from the Happenstance Witness that's moving across the map. Actually, funnily enough, the Ovaleth is here for detection, so that's even funnier. Now, when you detect a transport, you can click on it, and if you don't see any names, any text drawn on the screen to indicate what units are in it, then it's actually empty. So you can see the cargo of transports if you have detection on them. So that's one thing that these witnesses will be very adept at. Some Hydras are also out. It looks like that witness is narrowly going to evade destruction. And yeah, falling down to a situation where Neblime is feeling compelled to build a bit of a wall using gateways and pylons. We'll see if he's successful in that. Can't really quite attack into that, especially with the Matrix in the back here. The Matrix releases a healing pulse for shields, the same way that the Ecclesiast works. And the Acantor is out here as well. That is definitely going to cancel this attack for the most part. In fact, we might not see a single Protoss unit actually die here. I say that. Oh no, it's actually 100% true. I thought, well, maybe the Cella will really test the limits of that. We'll see. But yeah, that's quite shocking. It's quite shocking. Now the Acantor has been moved forward. The Zealot does end up dying. I guess we didn't watch it die, so maybe it still counts as what I said. Very, very easy hold so far for Neblime, and the Acantor shots are just spooky to look at. Don't try to play dodgeball, guys. 3rd base now being erected by Neblime. as he attempts to warp on in. He has the Envoy and the Akantor combo. He's making even more Akantors. Another engagement attempt coming out here from jakulangski, but it feels like he's really playing and flirting with disaster right now. He does end up killing off most of the Zealots at the very least. And he's misrallied a couple of workers. He can saturate his third base. Something that jakulangski does do a lot. And because I think most of the games that we are casting were played kind of like back-to-back. This set was played on the 10th, so it's a little bit more recent. But some of the games that were played earlier in June are games that when I'm casting them, I give feedback, right? And then, like, maybe Jack already plays a bunch of games since then, and some of those get casted, and I give the same feedback. So when I say stuff like this, it's not meant to be like hammering home on the same thing, but a lot of the times Jack does end up like over-expanding and under-saturating his bases, and it's a great idea to take a lot of bases for sure, but you really got to invest the extra bits of time to do that. And actually, to jakulangski's credit, he merely just saturates his third base here. He doesn't set up a fourth, actually. And I would be okay to set up a fourth in this situation. It's just, with his track record of some of the matches I've seen so far, it feels like maybe that's an area he's struggled in a lot, is he'll set up the base, but he won't saturate it, right? Like, we have pretty okay saturation in the natural, kind of low in the main, and very, very low in the third base. And so you could imagine, basically adding 20 workers or more to his current worker total and distributing them, predominantly towards the third, and then the main, and then a little bit in the natural, and then he'd be A-okay. Iris now coming up. Generally, you always want a lot of workers, and Neblime is a pretty good player to watch for that, having the same worker count with the third base only now being set up, basically, so, or actually a slightly better worker count, right? So this is sort of what I'm talking about there. The Iris is on the way, as I mentioned, though. You got to factor that in. This is a great little phalanx of walling setting up over here with, the lattices out in front to produce vassals and the like, or golems, and the engram has fallen, but the walling has definitely concentrated a lot of what jakulangski had in this fight into one sort of ball, and that does result in most of what jakulangski can do being just a little bit of superficial damage, where he pops a couple of units and he destroys an Akantor or two here and an engram or two there. And now he's kind of on the back foot, right? I mean, he's got very bruised units, not very many of them, in fact. He's got a bunch of Zeths coming out here, but we all know what happens with Zeths when you got Golem, Ecclesiast, Akantor. We got to have a drop dedicated over in this situation, it looks like, to the natural as this attack comes in at the third. The Iris finishes, but is it going to be too little too late? It looks like Neblime not actually going to drop the natural after all. This Death Flood demands his Akantor. He doesn't want to lose these units. And that's another thing to point out, is that so many resources have been dumped into a defensive play via the walling and stuff that we saw over there, and it worked out great. But as a result, he doesn't actually have a crazy standing army, right? His army count is still quite low. Adding a prostration stage, probably 4 pariahs if I had to speculate, but we'll see. We'll find out. Fourth base now coming up online. It's a little bit behind jakulangski's, but normally you expect Zerg to be a little bit further ahead in that. And Neblime actually up 30 workers now. You can see what I was talking about earlier. The Akantor is going to go down. There is one more in this Envoy. We'll see if it can end up taking a couple of pot shots and then falling away. Not very useful initial workers, initial hits on some of these plasma shells, but he will eventually help pop the couple of these units. And you do have to watch out for this. You can see him trying to spook it up. Oh, he was not able to pick that one up. And so that's a little bit of a gaffe, but no big deal at the end of the day. Almost 100 workers. You can afford to lose a couple extra units, especially a couple extra tech units. And now that jakulangski is, specializing his production here by adding more tech, the thing that you have to watch out for is what are you going to end up building. When are you going to rotate in a bunch of workers? You actually have very limited mineral income right now, partially because of the low saturation in all 3 bases, especially the... it looks like the third base is a little bit more saturated, but like when you select it, you see only 13. 3 more will give you baseline saturation, and then you can get up to 8 more. So we're talking about a situation where, like, this one is 19, so it's certainly fine, but you could still do 7 more there, 5 more. And then over here, it looks like we only have 11. That's actually a really big loss in terms of maximum saturation. Could have a lot more. So I don't say this just to be, sort of piss and moan about a certain person's play. I actually think it would be great to see what happens with Jack if he just has a lot more money to spend on that sort of thing. Now over here we have the Zealot being infested, so infested Zealot. If you guys like Antioch Chronicles or something, then maybe you'll be like, oh my god, I can't believe it. Now this Zealot over here has been on hold position, so the Gosvaleth will have to eat it up in order to step it on. Oh look, the Idol's going to try to come over here to stop that. The Akantor envoy is going to be very successful at shutting down the worker count over here. Not that there's that many of them. The idol now here to pop the Gosvaleth and send it packing as well. So now we just have to see what the response is going to be for Jack. He hasn't actually looked there. Now he's looked there. So he's going to go ahead and see what he can do. With the engagement happening elsewhere, his army size is mostly kind of like caught in two different places. Thankfully, the Matroleths make it out alive, or the single one that I see here. And it looks like the Akantor has been dealt with over on this side. I'm not seeing it migrate to another space. No, it actually ended up leaving and just being saved. You'll notice that reasonable level Protoss players will almost always do this sort of thing, where they'll pick up the envoy. Well, he forgot it. He'll task the envoy somewhere and order an unload so that you don't end up losing the Akantor in that respect, right? So that ends up being a pretty big deal. Now this idol is going to go ahead and get got. Now the Gosvaleth will go ahead and deploy the 5th base. Remember that 24 workers were just produced and we got 8 more in the production tab. So we are going to try to see Jakulangski catch up, but he has to do so many rotations of workers to match what Neblime is putting out on the field. And he's got things like gateways out. He's got all these sort of walls in and stuff like this. This is just like, I almost want to make just this the thumbnail. You know what I mean? I won't, but I almost want to do it because it's so interesting to see people actually go for those kinds of walls. We just don't see that very often. So shout out to the Shambler and Neblime for popularizing that. You do, of course, have Ensnaring Brood active, courtesy of the Matroleth, so some of these frontline units are finding it a little bit difficult to fall away. However, most of the frontline for Jakulangski has already been chewed through, and the Golems are still standing very, very tall right now. Finding it very difficult to focus them down. There's 18 of them in this force, so it's very unlikely that Jakulangski can punch through without much more dedicated forces. And you know what? Neblime is going to use this opportunity to charge in. He's got Potentates. He's got Akantors in that Envoy. There you go. Unloading one of them just for the maximum power. We have a little bit of Blissful Embrace infestation happening over here, or at least attempting to. But that Matroleth is not long for this world if it stays on the front line. And you know what? We've only lost 3 Golems so far. 4 Golems so far. And the battle rages on as Neblime is continuing to crush on through. His damage output is not that massive, but the Akantor has dealt a crazy amount of damage already, and this is going to be more than enough for now to push Jakulangski back. Jack going for a much more like, this is a composition he's gone for that doesn't do that much upfront damage, and the Golems are the perfect response to that, because if you can't focus down and single out individual targets, you absolutely will end up falling prey to that. You can see how much easier it is to kill things like the Golems when they're... oh, I love this. One more hit. No, it's going to get away. Oh my god, I can't believe it. The Golems take a lot more immediate damage when they don't have benefits from Potentates and Ecclesiasts, and when they don't have more Golems nearby to absorb multi-target damage. Now we have about 29 workers over here that Jakulangski is soon going to realize he has, as he's trying to see about maybe doing a counterattack and trading bases. The only problem is this base is not at all going to be tradable. Like, it's just so powerful in terms of its defense. Such is the fortress that Neblime has erected. And now all of these workers are going to get absolutely put through the meat grinder. That was a significant portion of Jakulangski's potential economy, and they are all falling. Here comes the flank. Let's see what Jakulangski can come up with. But it feels to me like what we are about to witness is not only the destruction of the 9 o'clock position, but also potentially a defeat in terms of the army for Jakulangski. Neblime is backed into a corner, so he has to fight his way out. But he, of course, has more units being replenished. He is up a base. This is looking very, very difficult for Jakulangski to come back from. I think the writing is going to be on the wall for this one. A very interesting composition that he's chosen for this fight. And the Golems are eventually chewed through thanks to the Cagrolus count rising. But even if he clears this out, he still has to trade cost efficiently versus the reinforcements. And now he's coming out with a bunch of Ovolets, but there's nothing in them. I thought maybe he was going to do some combat drops, try to get on top, up close and personal versus the Potentates, but his Cagrolusks are being sandwiched. That is going to be much too much, with a Hierophant hit squad hitting the bottom right, clearing out any expansions that might be set up over there. And now Jack is almost certainly going to end up falling very, very far behind. You can infest all the Dracodons you want for a little bit of, happiness, but at this point, the Akantor firing shots off. It's going to get some nice meaty connections onto these workers. And Jakulangski, he's lost his base in the bottom right natural. He's losing the base in the bottom right third, and his 6 o'clock position is completely wiped of potential workers. They weren't even mining that whole time, down to below 60 workers, desperately attempting to reset at 9 o'clock. but he's now down a considerable number of bases, and the Akantor is even over here to try to help out clear this position. This is not going to be an easy force to wipe. It's not going to be inexpensive, shall we say. So even though the Atros doesn't end up going down, and we have an infested golem, which is pretty funny, we are still talking at this point about a significant deficit, right? This base not even getting put down because that is how low in the income department Jakulangski actually is. And as he resets a bunch of workers to potentially saturate his third again, his main's going to start to come under fire, courtesy of this Akantor. Now that Envoy does get down, dropped pretty low. Circuits over here are going to take the initial engagements, but there's not really anything backing them up. All of the Zerg units that Jakulangski did have hanging on was off to the bottom middle. Yeah, Neblime's done very nicely to control the pace of this game. I feel like Jack had a stronger showing in the early stages, sort of like what we talked about, right? Where he was threatening some attacks. And I think his composition has a lot of merit, but he needed to have more saturation on his bases in order to get to the right point where he could focus down the golems and the similar sorts of units. But now he's down to, you know, again, he's built back his worker count a little bit, but he just doesn't have that many bases actually running, right? Now, we've got a war on two fronts. This fortified choke over here going to basically be a meat grinder for Jack. He'll trade very cost inefficiently going up here, even if he does eventually break it. And meanwhile, he is going to end up losing all of the bases off to the right-hand side of the map, losing the bottom right third, losing the 6 o'clock position. Trying to do a bit of a flank to come on through with the Avigralisks, maybe get some focus fired going, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, man. I feel like... I don't even know if it's right to say he's hanging on at this point. I feel like, you know, Neblime has just about gotten rid of him. Best he can do is hope that he can amass enough Protoss units, I suppose. That's his current tech, his current idea. But we've got guards in the top hemisphere of the map. We obviously still have Neblime on 5 bases, but this is more than enough for what he needs, right? Infested Hierophant, of course, classic move. You can see here you can see here how difficult it is for small arms to breach the golems. That's for sure. Pariah is now joining the fray. This is something that we haven't seen yet in the match, and it is going to be quite explosive. We've got plenty of Kagralisks here to try to snipe him down, but when there's so many targets to snipe down, I feel like surely the writing must be on the wall. The Matrolets are going to arrive and try to infest the Pariahs, but I don't know if they're going to have it. Yeah, they all end up falling instead. The Matrolets not able to finish the job. We still have the Akantor inside that Envoy for so long. It's the same one. It's got 84 frags. It's got 7,500 damage. The road to 10K. Akantor from downtown. I love Akantor drops. That one's a testament to iQueer right there. GG's called. Neblime will be victorious. The writing was kind of on the wall with that one for a little bit, but let's see what happens in game numero dos. We're heading to Maxiom for game number 2, and now we once again have cross bonds. It's going to be Neblime as the green Protoss, and I am not red, aka Jakulangski, as none other than the red Zerg. In fact, I think this might be Scarlet? Oh no, it's Vermilion, the classic color. Well, boys, we do have cross bonds again, and just to prove you guys I was right about this being a green. It's actually dark green, so I'm wrong, but don't worry. I just coughed when I said dark and then just said green. That's all that picked up. You know, you got this advanced voice modulation software that censors your speech. I mean, adjusts what you say and covers it up so that you don't hear all of the coughs and stuff. And so that's what happened. My microphone filtered out the dark part of the green that I was saying. So yeah, that's why I was actually right the whole time. But Neblime leading in the set, up 1-0. It's not a conventional series, so I only got 4 replays, but that's all right. You know how it goes. So now that I can comfortably take a sip, as we have a gateway coming on down, I'll just remind you guys that Cosmonarchy is funded by viewers like you. Thank you. And of course, the pickup partner and similar people. If you want to donate to us monthly or one time over on the coffee page, it's in the bottom right of your screen. It says support us at coffee.com/PronogoandVeek7. So check that out. We got perks. We got tiers. Yeah, I make maps once a month for people who are at a certain tier or content in general if they want a video instead. In fact, I still have to hit them up for what his one is. He never sent me a request, so I kind of got to chase after him. But yeah, if you feel like you want something like that, you can donate at that dollar amount. We got all sorts of other perks, like being able to ask questions on our podcasts and being able to chime in on all sorts of things. Like just being able to talk with us once a month in a donator discussion, and all the time via text in the sort of hallowed halls of the Ahmed Arson Isle, which is the name of our private chat. So there you go. A little bit of a plug. Thanks for checking us out. Warden at the ramp. It's going to be Neblime going for a Drakadon first. I haven't seen that option in a very long time. It's so cool to watch people do like little changes here and there. So this Drakadon opener is definitely going to be favored versus the Quaz until you get that all-important Vornath opener, right? When the Vorvikors start coming out, Drakadons do hurt a lot. But for now, they might be able to just move across the map. We'll have to wait and see. And yeah, I was blabbing about all that plug stuff, so I didn't actually take a sip. I forgot to do that, so let me do that. Bit of a thunderstorm going on in the background. I appreciate the ambiance. Kind of adds a little bit of extra tension to... You know, it could be the last game of today's video. We'll see how swift it is. If it ends up going pretty fast, we'll just go on to the next one. I don't shy away from videos that are more closer to an hour mark now. Although it does mean that sometimes I have to record the videos the same day as they go live, which means maybe they're not at the normal time clock, the time slot that I like to occupy. But that is just the way that life is sometimes. But yeah, thanks for checking us out. Thanks for being a part of our community and enjoying the content that's coming out here. It looks like Neblime will be going for a fast expansion, but not as fast as jakulangski, which is kind of par for the course. More Zethar cores coming on up. They are going to need to watch out, as this Hierophant might end up... oh, never mind. He's just going to go force the Unburrow and then fall away. So that's kind of interesting. Does end up picking a single one. When the Hierophant debuffs an enemy unit with its auto attack, it reduces the speed of it, as long as the Hierophant's still within a range. So, yeah, pretty cool. Now, when Jack sees this, he goes for his patented fast second base. And I'm not really 100% sure what informs this decision. Maybe he can comment in the video, because I know he sometimes does watch the videos back. It's pretty interesting to me, because maybe he's just reading Neblime and like, oh, you're not going to move out with the units that you have. And Neblime is admittedly going for a second gateway now, but it was after an expansion nexus, and it was after all sorts of other stuff. And jakulangski kind of playing with fire here, running forward to constantly sort of heckle his opponent. But he actually doesn't have that many military units, right? And so if he keeps hemorrhaging his Zeths before he, for example, finishes off his Vornath, which is now done, then maybe he can't turn them into Vorvs. 3 of them have just begun. But the other thing is that if you're also trying to build a lot of military right now, as your natural hatch finishes, and as your Hydroth Den is put down, and as your third base is nearing completion, you won't have any saturation on the workers. So this is going to be the game, the yardstick, the meter stick that I kind of hold jakulangski to account for. Like, is this going to be the legit one? Is this going to be when we see Jack kind of correct some of the deficiencies in his play previously? Or is this actually like a 500 IQ thing where I just don't fully grasp what he's going for? Because he is harvesting and prioritizing that Vespene. So if he does so for the third base as well, I could absolutely see a world where we see some more work being done here. Now he's pulling a little bit of attention away from Neblime, who isn't mining at all from his natural for now. More workers being made, but Jack has a decided advantage in that department and is making more. So I like what I'm seeing so far. We got exploratory Nathar cores that are going to come up here. And when you see the Vorv, you absolutely do have to do what Neblime is doing and put a defensive warden down, because that does mean that the Naths could come. And if there's, 6 of them, then that warden is dead, but at least it buys time. If it's 6 of them and there's no warden, then you're losing probably 2, 3, maybe 4 workers, mining time lost, etc., etc. You also have to move your ground units at the back of the base into the actual main, and then you might get attacked by a run-in, right? So that could also happen as well. We do have a little bit of Vespene harvesting happening in the third base. I was going to say, like, maybe he's actually doing some kind of crazy thing that only Zerg could do. And I've theorized this a little bit as well. Like, the concept of Zerg basically going after the idea of basically taking, like, a lot of extra bases early on, and the only thing you do with your workers is harvest from the Vespene. Like, you fully saturate the geysers and the ridges. Then you probably could power to a very fast tier 2. And it looks like maybe Jack is thinking that exact thing. Although right now it's a little bit unclear as to what his opponent is going to be doing. The Witness is out, so the Embassy is the next tech of choice for Neblime. He is going to go ahead and start gathering some intel. And he's making some Zealots. His Gateway army is not that impressive, but Jack has not really been making military units yet, so this is fine for him. Third base now being theorized here by Neblime, who doesn't exactly have the resources to drop it just yet, but that seems to be his next move. Also worthy of having Nather cores is because this is a certain situation where you're up against a Protoss that has in the past done the crazy double embassy artisan push, where he just goes for mass artisans and like harvests a lot of gas and stuff as Protoss. So it's kind of interesting to imagine something like that being done, and then the Nather cores can kind of canvas the area and look out for it. So that can be helpful. So yeah, Neblime's going to go ahead and scout here. He's going to see that there's, you know, not really a crazy number of... oh, look at this. 3 Larvosk. Triple Larvosk over here is very interesting. Kagrint at the front. We don't have an Ovoleth started yet. So triple Larvosk means this might be a 3-base like tier 1 all-in push that Jack is thinking about doing. I say that because that's a lot of Espene to dedicate to the just that area, right? And so if we just see like a mass like Zeth Vorv Hydra push, it can absolutely run roughshod over this position. You can see a bit of a flank happening over here as a whole lot of Hydras are in the area. Unfortunately, they end up getting tasked out and they take the long road back, and that will mean that most of them will end up dying. So I do feel like Jack could have actually just stood and fought this and maybe looked a little bit better. But even still, he might actually have the advantage here a little bit deceptively. These Ecclesiasts going to be the moneymakers, as one of them is going to go ahead and start to fall on the right-hand side. No, instead getting restored by the shields of the other Ecclesiasts, you know, being fled over. And you can see, this is what I was talking about with that initial fight. I feel like if Jack just pulled the trigger, he actually could have maybe isolated his opponent. But instead of doing that, he kind of flubbed that attack, and then he followed through a little bit slowly, and yada, 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 and now here we are. So he's going to try to take 9 o'clock as his next location. Very, very poor saturation at the third, as we mentioned before, and only 13 workers in the natural for that. And, you know, a lot of these workers are oversaturated. What you want is, you know, it's 1 worker per, it's 3 workers per mineral field for maximum saturation that you can get out of a base, right? And so, you know, 4 of those workers could be tasked on other things, like, for example, saturating the ridge, and one of them could come down here. And so the fact that that's not happening is a little bit worrisome. Jack clearly banking a lot of Vespene so he can go up to tier 2. And his worker in the 9 o'clock position did get denied by this Zealot, which looks like it's trying to make its way out in some sort of situation. Now, Neblime has basically been caught off here, and so a couple of Ecclesiasts and Striders are going to end up going down. Great surround potential here, courtesy of Jakulangski's Vorvs as they start to stick to individual targets here. Very, very good play coming out of our Zerg. Can he get a victory for the Philippines? That's the question. As he makes the engagement happen over here, the attempted walling might be a little bit too little too late. We got a bunch of workers coming to try to back it up. The frustration stage is done, but I think it's way too little, actually. And Jack might have found the right timing for Neblime to just get absolutely gobsmacked, right? What more can he do? He's not making any military right now. He's making workers. So Jack is not going to go for a finishing blow right just yet. The pylon's obviously going to get sniped, so that will need to be repowered at some point. And Jack seems to be convinced that just picking the structures is a good idea here. I feel like he could have just, you know, killed a lot of the Draconans, traded down the military, and made it so that Neblime was more vulnerable to a follow-up attack than what he would have been otherwise. So that does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity. The Iral Iris goes down. A bunch of workers should probably be made at this point. We even have more of them coming over here. Just get this stuff fully saturated. Set up your 4th base as Jack is about to do. And yeah, get everything nice and saturated, right? We still have no ridge mining over there in the main. Still very low in the worker count here at the natural. But it looks like he's fully saturated this. Yeah, he could transfer, you know, something, yeah, I want to say 7 workers off from the 3rd base. So I think we're about to hear some thunder. I just saw a big flash. So maybe that was just the warp flash of Neblime working his way in. Adding potentates to the army. They're actually really good versus Zerg because the Zerg always end up getting into melee range anyway. I like popping this treasury. It's actually kind of nice. And forcing the army to come on back is going to be a big deal as well. There's only 1 pylon powering all this stuff, so just going after that is a great idea. The Engram's going to finish warping in after the power has already been denied. Now, another pylon has finished, and it doesn't actually look like Jack is aware of that, so he's now going to go and allow that Engram to chew through him a little bit. The Pariah will also get a lot of value over here, courtesy of the Ecclesiasts keeping it alive versus all those Hydras, and because there were no Vorvs to rend the armor as well, that also impacted quite significantly. So, you know what, that could have been a little bit more convincing, and maybe he could have popped the Engram and made this a lot more expensive. But besides that, I do like the situation here for Jack. I mean, this is a lot more playable than his last spot. He is, you know, building a bunch of workers and waypointing them over here. And even though he still hasn't saturated his natural, he's still looking okay with the extra workers at the treasury there. And I love the play to snipe the treasury on the opposing side. I'm not even sure if Neblime was aware that that was happening yet. So still tier 1 units, but tier 2 structures are on the way. And also the excisants are up for the rest of the work. This is a little awkward here for Jack, as his workers in the natural, or in the treasury rather, are going to get bopped. Only one of them remaining over here, and the attack speed increases courtesy of the Pariah being very useful for this situation. Now the Zorius is here to try to speed things up when you're moving towards that Pariah. Whenever it hits a unit, everybody else gets a speed boost when moving towards them. So you can imagine that's very, very effective. Now the Pariah will end up going down, not before providing a couple of additional attack speed increases to the rest of these units. And even though, like, with the exception of the Potente, which isn't even sitting in on the fight anymore, the rest of the stuff is all tier 1 stuff. I mean, Jack is only building, Hydras right now anyway. His Alkagiteth just finished, so he can go for the Kagralisks like he did in the previous game. We'll see if he wants to try to do that. A bit of a melee-focused composition heading up over there. Will start to stab into 9 o'clock, and Jack might end up being a little bit too chase-happy, as he's trying to set up multiple bases using these Gosvaleths. Not a terrible idea, but in this case, not a great position to be in with most of your army. He doesn't actually have that many units being made right now for that, and he is going to end up falling prey to getting a lot of his workers slain at the 9 o'clock position, peeling everything off there, and maybe his... No, I was going to say maybe his Zets will show up over here and scout that 3 o'clock is being taken as a counter. But yeah, both players going up to 4 bases. And at this point, we are looking a little bit worse for wear on that front. Pariah not losing out too much. Still not taking any hull damage over here. And the splash damage that it deals is so good for this. Now, ensnaring him is a great idea. It kind of counters the attack speed increase that he's going to get. And look at this. I would love to see an infestation going on for this. But look, the focus fire isn't actually there, and that Matrolith ends up getting bopped. So that Pariah will not turn tide. It will not change sides. No turncoat Protoss here. Not yet, anyway. And all right, I mean, with this base set up, we can see those worker transfers come in. Neblime stretching ahead in the worker count, mostly courtesy of his harassment. And Jack really testing his, I would say, his ability to multitask as he sets up base after base, trying to take over the whole bottom right half of the map, or I guess quadrant of the map, the whole lower hemisphere. Potente waddling around here with the swagger afforded to him by his Protoss birthright, decides, yeah, I can just exist in here. That's not a problem, right? And... I mean, he can certainly try. You can see him stepping forward to try to swing that sword. It's pretty funny. It's not gonna end up working out. So when the Potente does a melee attack, it provides Ascension, the attack speed increase to all units nearby. So it ends up being pretty effective as a crowd pleaser, so to speak. All right, what does Jakulangski want to do now? With the 3 o'clock position occupied by Neblime, I really feel like if there had been full attack when this position was falling initially, and there was a bunch of Drakidins, if the Drakidin count had been reduced a lot heavier, then Neblime would have been a lot more scared of pushing forward. Now, this amount of static defense is ludicrous, and we love to see it. The little bit of tower defense moves happening over here, and not exactly ideal for our Jakulangski man. But now there's going to be a bit of an attack in the middle. And you know what? We love to see stuff like this because, again, it's a question of can you focus fire? Can you dish out enough damage to overwhelm things like the golems? And the workers certainly are not going to help with that. But where is the Kagralisk count? The Kagralisk count is so low, and only one of them is being made right now. Instead, it's a bunch of Zethrakors and certainly a bunch of static defense structures on the bottom right quadrant yet again. So that should, at the very least, insulate him from counterattacks. But Neblime has the flexibility and the freedom to go, oh my goodness, mass prostration stage. Well, only 3 of them, but it still looks like a lot of them, right? I've never seen somebody build so many potentates, but Neblime is a cool guy. Very cool guy. All right, what more do we have then? Neblime going to see about charging up the ramp over here. 9 o'clock does not really have any static defense set up there. There's a single Circuith, and everything else is just Kagrants. He does have some units over here for the push. He's at least going to take care of the Drakidins on the low ground. And that is going to, of course, encourage Neblime to charge forward and take the high ground. So now he's sort of trading spaces with his opponent. And now these structures can start mutating now, but the focus fire is going to be there. Now, the longer that this Convalescent stays alive, the more really Rokors we might end up having over here. But it looks like he's going to get sicked on. Of course, the force down here in the bottom is kind of just, it's just tank. It's not really that much damage. And the Potentates are getting ensnared as well. So that flank should end up falling at some point pretty soon, with the Golems kind of being in the wrong spot for Neblime to really win this fight easily. An infested Drakidin for a good measure, of course. Some more units cleaning up in from the right-hand side. And yeah, just sort of forcing them down right now. The Golem count is still very healthy, but the Potentate count is starting to drift, and yeah, that is probably going to be the end of it. We'll see how many more golems end up surviving the incursion here, but I think at this point we're looking pretty good for jakulangski to rout his opponent. He didn't lose too many workers. He did lose a lot of static defense, but, you know, you can just sort of make more workers at that point. Even as a worker lead right now, a lot of vassals being made is a bit of a sudden switch, maybe recognizing that there's not that much splash damage in this composition, but also maybe recognizing that he can just start roving the map and attacking bases and stuff and making sure that you know, punish the worker counts and whatnot. So that's pretty interesting. jakulangski pivoting over to the upper center of the map, and maybe he can just actually make a run for this area. He doesn't know it yet, but Neblime is limited to the positions on the map that you see here. So even though he's gone for, like, I guess this is actually 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock or something, whatever. He's gone for both 3 o'clock bases. Jack has not actually taken the upper 9, so he's instead taken all 3 of these 3. So, you know, we're at 5 bases for Neblime, and we are at 7 bases for jakulangski. So in theory, there should be plenty of stuff here, plenty of an advantage for our Zerg player, but in practice, the worker counts are almost identical, and the saturation is not all there. Gas capping has been happening, but maybe at a bit of a slowed rate. For example, there are no gas caps here on the bottom right side, except with the exception of the bottom right main, so 2 more gas caps to go there. A pariah going to get bopped here. Cagrola's count very, very high. The question really, for my mind, is what is Neblime's composition? What is his answer to all of the Cagrolisks? Because they're not exactly snipers, but they're great sustained damage dealers, and with the Matrolets adding Ensnare to the mix, it is going to make it very, very difficult for Neblime to breach the attack. Gateway starting to fall on the front lines. Those can be a pretty good usage of Neblime's resources, considering obviously they're going to absorb a lot of damage, and of course they're going to make some tanks in the meanwhile. Vassals coming on in from the lower end. They are going to get routed pretty quickly there, but the Cagrolis count has started to drop, and what I'd love to see over here is more Matrolet spell usage. I feel like that would be a great move. Instead, Tier 3 is ordered up in the background, and the Cagrolis count is not actually falling that fast. You can see here, the engram dealing almost 2,000 damage in that fight has been very, very helpful, but I still don't know if Neblime has enough army to actually make it through this area. 23 more Cagrolisks on the way. Jack might be able to push it to a victory right now. I cannot believe that this composition ended up being what he needed, but the Vigorlisks for tanking, the Lyrilisks for general catching, and of course the ever-important Matrolets helping him out massively there. The Barghests come in, but they are swatted out of the sky very swiftly. And it looks like Neblime, his armor will end up stabilizing a little bit, but his army count has been routed very significantly. And to me, that is a story that will probably... I think that really does tell you that, like, okay, if Jack reorganizes himself and goes for another fight like that, he's adding the Spire. You can tell he's setting himself up for Tier 3. He's got all of his bases in order. Sure, he could cap the geysers in a couple more locations. Absolutely could be the case. But he's already going for triple Oxel. You know, he's already upgrading his Larvosk. So what that means is he's going to end up being able to mutate Sovrolets out the wazoo, just a ridiculous degree. So many of them. And that is his favorite unit to go for. So love to see it. Absolutely going to be a pretty slick option for our Zerg player. He's just combing the streets, making sure Neblime's still locked in at 5 bases. A Nexus going to start over here with that treasury area already having been claimed and cleaned earlier. And this is only minerals. What really does Neblime need and want? At this point, he's just adding charlatans to the mix out of the rogue galleries. Those are going to be gas intensive. And now trying to see if he can make an engage happen over here. The Ottstal Lava Form nearly complete, but is it even going to matter? A bunch of Zets coming in. They're going to get cleaned up nice and easy. These units should be on attack move, not regular move, so that's a bit of a missed opportunity for Jack to get a lot of extra free hits, but the Matrolets are still here, and as the Matrolets show up, the Ensnare is going to prove to be too much. Attempted infestation there, not exactly the main target. You can see Neblime taking the advantage of the opportunity to get a lot of that stuff taken care of. But this Nexus is not going to go up. Locked in at the 5 base economic limit. That's what Neblime's at right now. Not even a cancel coming out, but, you know, minerals are not necessarily his main force. Oh, boy. Axtoth coming down, as well as, of course, the upgraded Spire, the Haunt. So as that comes in, I am so excited to see just how many Tier 3 units jakulangski is going to go for, extending the game. And you know what, not in a way that is like, this looks very, very crazy, but if you don't invest in a heavy air fleet or something, and that's what the Vassal Barghest combo I think was all about, what is your compositional response to that from Neblime's sake? You know, he doesn't go for Argosies, so he doesn't have access to Magisters and the like to just try to beat them back. He doesn't go for example, the just the general Stargates for land effects to disable them. So it's not like he can just pick them apart. And he also doesn't have great siege potential, right? No Acantors this game and no Architects because no Ardent Authorities were produced. So as a result, Neblime has decided he's going to see if he can solve this problem via maybe just like the unorthodox air approach. 6 Barghests gives you 6 Armor Pen. So, he can maybe just come over here and try to snipe a lot of the hatches. There's only a couple of Spraits over here, so that could definitely help him out. And as the vassals descend on the bottom right base, we are going to see a bunch of forces push on through. The Chakralgan Chazal is on the way, and I, for one, could not be happier. We've got a bunch of Mortothrichors, a bunch of Excitralisks. The former will be fairly nimble and, something that like increases in power as time goes on. The hatch does finally get sniped, but the Excitralisks are going to be able to deal splash damage when they actually are recovered. You can see Neblime wisely pinning them, trying to get rid of them. But yeah, that's absolutely going to end up working out. Or no, I think I'm actually mistaken. Yeah, they don't do splash anymore. But they deal a lot of upfront damage and they attack very fast. So you're talking about like every time a couple of those attack, you just end up losing a lot of those sorts of things. Now the Mortothrichors becoming empowered in the presence of death means that they will end up getting some lifesteal. But this does feel like a little bit of a sloppy engagement here from Jakulangski, perhaps a little bit on the lackluster side. The Kagralisks are here, Excitralisks are here. I was expecting a bunch of Sovrolets, but it looks like Jack wants to go a different route, even though he went for the Tazral Haunt, even though he went for those, Oxal Cesiants, right? That is going to afford him the extra larva that will take his opponent to task. But right now, Neblime is looking rather threatening. Admittedly, too many static defense structures over here to really poke through, and many, many more workers being remade so that this base in the bottom right can be reset. That is going to allow quite a bit of more power here at Neblime, resetting the 12 o'clock position. Again, mineral only, but still something he can potentially use. An Infested Ecclesiast will meet its maker, will pan away respectfully so that you guys don't see. They actually took him away to a re-education camp, that's all. And the Cascathalor shots are going to be coming out here. Now, this is just a dirty situation to be in. Those green pools on the ground actually increase movement speed of units, so it can be very, very effective. But the Cascathalors all the way at the 9 o'clock position is going to allow Neblime to take the engagement and go very, very close to his enemy's forces. Let's see what he can do with that, because the Ecclesiasts and Golems are staying alive for a very long time. But as far as I can tell, my man, I think the Mortothrichors are helping to clean through. The Cascathalors have joined the fight and are just slamming AoE. Area damage after area damage. There's not that much here for Neblime to hold. He can't really engage onto his opponent. And now that you walk through that green goop, it's dealing a little bit of damage to you, but it's increasing your speed as well. I don't know that Neblime has that much back at home. He's setting up a bunch of forces, not necessarily looking at what's happening. And we have the Sasirvaleth. Finally, the Sasirvaleth graces us for a cast, giving every unit that it provides the aura to lifesteal, equivalent to damage dealt. And now it seems very obvious that Neblime wants to come in here and pop some of these structures before any additional tech can really come on out. Going after the Tazral Haunt, he doesn't want to allow his opponent to end up fielding any additional, Sovrolets or anything of the like. 4 of them end up getting queued up as a result of that. But that's not the end of the world. There's so much more tech out here that is very, very scary to provide. And sure, you may have ended up getting away in that situation. And yeah, it was probably very cost efficient, right? Not very much splash, but you just got a good look at the army. At this point, if there was an A-move operation at some point for Mr. Jack, I'm pretty sure he'd just walk away with the game. He's got so many units. A couple of Sovs have been made. The Algaztalisks are out. In fact, the king very happy about that, I'm sure. And yeah, just the Sasirvaleths also make it so that it's very difficult to sort of fight that army head on. Right now, a huge tech deficit for Neblime. He's upgrading his production here, going for the Ancestral Archives. I'm looking around to see where it's being made. Can't find it. Who knows? And yeah, just setting up some Nexus over here. That's going to end up getting bopped. Vassal Barghest unit gets cleaned up as well. Preemptive evacuation of the workers, as I think Neblime knows what's coming. Going for an Optecton, is that really going to be the answer when you've got Alcagalisks and everything else in between? This is going to be such a difficult army to actually break. We'll see what Neblime has up in store, but I fear what is to come. The Algaztalisks chucking bones after bones. They've got a bone to pick with Neblime, that's for sure. And I think he's got a bone to pick with his G key, because this one is almost over and shot. He's going to set up for one last climactic battle. He sends a couple Kabbalists out to try to deal with the bottom right, but that is much too little, much too late at this point. The Alcagalisks, the Kagralisks, the Excentralisks are just shellacking this position. And what more can be done? The Pariahs are going to get nuked from orbit before they can even get close to inflicting fatal damage. And you know what? All the splash, courtesy of the Pariahs and courtesy of other things, are going to be good enough to deal some pretty good damage to the units coming out there. The Augustalisks end up being killed, but dude, the base count was too high for too long, and Jack posts a dub. I am so proud of my Jack. Well, join us tomorrow for part 2 of this set, and the fact that it is neck and neck for now, I think that's very exciting. GG's, and we'll be back.